I was 26 then, driving long overnight routes through rural Colorado and New Mexico, moving replacement hardware for a tech repair company that promised fast rural service, but had almost no actual staff. The job sounded simple: at first pick up a loaded van, follow the manifest, drop off boxes, and return before sunrise. But nothing about those routes ever felt simple once I got out there. The back roads were narrow, unmarked, and stretched through miles of land so empty it felt like the world had forgotten about it. Still, the money was good enough that I convinced myself I could get used to the loneliness. By the time the story I'm about to tell happened, I had already done maybe 20 overnight runs and thought I had seen everything the desert could throw at me: dust storms, sudden flash floods, wandering cattle in the middle of the highway. But nothing had prepared me for the eeriness that settles over County Road 17 after midnight. It's one of those roads that barely appears on GPS, the kind dispatch only assigned when every other route was backed up or overbooked. I never liked it. Too straight, too dark, and too far from anything resembling help. The nearest town was 40 minutes in either direction, and cell service flickered in and out like a dying candle. That night, around 12:30, I had been driving for almost 9 hours and was halfway through the final stretch before heading to Durango. The air outside was still and heavy, the kind of heat that doesn't break even after the sun goes down. I had music playing low just to keep myself alert, but the monotony of the empty road lulled everything into a strange rhythm. Every few minutes, I checked my mirrors just to make sure I wasn't drifting, which is why it stood out to me so sharply when I suddenly saw a movement up ahead, something faint, pale, and definitely human-shaped. At first, I thought I was hallucinating from exhaustion, because who would be walking out here at nearly 1 in the morning? But as my headlights reached further down the road, the shape became clearer. It was a woman. She was standing on the right shoulder, waving both arms in these wide, frantic motions, like she was signaling a plane to land. Her clothing immediately struck me as off. She wore a bright white dress, still clean, despite the dirt road and the dry brush that swallowed both sides of it. Her hair was long and dark and hung over her shoulders in tangled waves. Something about the way she was standing, too stiff, too centered, sent a ripple of unease through me. I slowed down but didn't stop all the way. I kept my foot hovering over the brakes while lowering my window a few inches. She rushed toward the van as if she had been waiting for me specifically, calling out something I couldn't understand. Her voice sounded shaky, almost breathless, and I could see the glint of her phone in her hand as she tried to hold it high, like she'd been walking for hours looking for a signal. When she reached the side of my van, she tugged on the passenger handle, but I kept it locked. She said her car had broken down up the road and that she needed a ride to the nearest gas station. But her speech felt disconnected, like she was skipping important details or intentionally avoiding them. I asked her where exactly her vehicle was. She didn't answer. She just kept repeating, "Please, I need help. Please, just drive." Something about her expression made the hair on the back of my neck rise. Her eyes weren't frantic, they were focused, watching me. Measuring something, I should have driven off, and part of me wanted to. But another part remembered what it would feel like if someone left my sister or my mom stranded in the desert at night. Plus, I wasn't unarmed. I kept a small pistol secured inside the door compartment for emergencies. That false sense of security made me believe I had control of the situation. So I reluctantly unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in without hesitation, her movements too quick, too deliberate. She didn't smell like she'd been stranded or overheated. There was no sweat, no dust on her dress, no scent of engine oil or spilled coolant. She smelled clean, newly clean, like she had stepped out of an air-conditioned house minutes earlier. As I started driving again, she leaned forward and pointed vaguely down the road. "Just straight. Just keep going." Her voice cracked in a way that didn't fit the calm face she had. When I asked her how long she'd been out there, she didn't answer. Instead, she asked me if I was alone. The question hit me harder than I expected, and the dread forming in my gut sharpened at the tone she used, slow, curious, almost hopeful. I lied and told her my coworker was following behind us and would catch up soon. She didn't react, but the corner of her mouth twitched like she didn't believe me. I looked in my side mirror and froze. A shadow moved. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks. But as the van rolled forward, my headlights illuminated something on the shoulder behind us, a figure stepping out from behind a road sign. A man. He had been hidden perfectly until we'd driven far enough for the angle to reveal him. He stood completely still, watching us, his outline faint but unmistakable. The woman beside me shifted slightly and without turning her head whispered, "Don't stop." My chest tightened. I didn't know whether she was warning me or threatening me. Before I could ask anything, another person stepped out from the darkness ahead of us, this time directly into the road, blocking our path. A tall man holding something long and metallic in one hand, a crowbar or maybe a heavy pipe. He lifted it slightly, like a signal, and the woman next to me inhaled sharply. That was it. My survival instinct took over. I pressed my foot onto the gas pedal hard enough to jolt the van. The man in front stumbled back and swung his arm like he was trying to intimidate me into slowing down, but I didn't. I veered slightly and sped past him, the metal weapon scraping the side panel of my van. The woman beside me shouted something in panic, and her hand dove into her purse. I didn't need to see what she was reaching for. I already knew. I grabbed the pistol from the door compartment with one hand and slammed it against the steering wheel just hard enough for her to notice it. Her hand froze immediately. I didn't aim it at her, I just let her see that I wasn't defenseless. Her breathing changed instantly, shifting from panic to something calmer, almost calculating again. She sat rigidly, staring out the windshield while I drove at a speed that made the van shake. For nearly 30 minutes, neither of us spoke. The desert outside blurred past, and every shadow felt like another person stepping out to stop us. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting a pair of headlights to appear behind me, but the road stayed empty. When the first distant lights of a small town appeared on the horizon, relief washed over me so strongly it hurt. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, an older place with flickering lights and 2 diesel trucks parked near the bathroom doors. I told her she needed to get out. She stared at me blankly, refusing to move. She muttered that she couldn't stay here, and her voice sounded almost angry, like I had broken some unspoken plan she assumed I was part of. My patience snapped. I threw the passenger door open and leaned across the seat, forcing her out just enough that gravity did the rest. She stumbled back and hit the pavement. One of the truckers started walking toward us, confusion on his face, clearly ready to step in. I didn't give him the chance. I told him loudly that she wasn't safe to pick up, that something had happened back on the road, but I didn't stay long enough to explain. I didn't want to spend another second in her presence. I left the gas station and headed 2 blocks over to another one, parked under the brightest light I could find, and stepped out to get some air. When I checked the passenger seat, I found something that made every nerve in my body lock up. Wedged between the cushions was a small prepaid phone battery wrapped in tape and a bundle of plastic ties, new, unused, still sealed. I felt sick. Whatever she had planned, whatever those men were waiting for, it wasn't just a simple robbery. It was something worse. I threw everything into a trash bin behind the station and washed my hands even though they weren't dirty. I never reported it to the police. Not because I didn't think it mattered, but because explaining why I was armed, why I had forced a woman out of my vehicle, and why I had fled the scene felt like the kind of conversation that could easily turn against me. I finished the delivery run, returned the van, and told dispatch nothing except that the route had taken longer than expected. For weeks afterward, I checked the local news for any mention of a stranded woman or an attempted roadside assault. Nothing ever came up. It was like those people never existed. But every time I drive a rural highway at night now, I can't help scanning the shoulders of the road looking for anyone waving me down. And I can shake the feeling that if I had hesitated for even 1 second longer that night, I wouldn't be alive to tell this story. I don't usually leave my apartment after midnight, but that night my stomach felt like it was trying to digest itself. And my fridge held nothing except expired yogurt and a single slice of cheese. The mini-mart down Highway 47 was the only place open at that hour, sitting alone like a flickering lighthouse in the middle of nowhere. The December air stung my face as soon as I stepped outside, that sharp, freezing kind that wakes you up even if your brain feels like melted glue from working too long. My car groaned when I turned the engine, as if protesting the whole idea, but I ignored it and backed out onto the empty road. I don't know why the darkness looked heavier that night. Like it's just the absence of light, but something sitting on the road waiting for someone stupid enough to wander into it. I remember telling myself I'd be in and out in 5 minutes, nothing more. The long stretch of asphalt felt endless, and the silence inside my car made my nerves twitch with every small noise the engine made. Not a single other vehicle showed up behind or ahead of me, and the fields on both sides looked like ocean waves frozen mid-motion in the dark. My headlights carved 2 narrow tunnels through the fog, and for a second I thought I saw a shape moving in the distance, but it vanished before I could blink. I kept glancing at my rearview mirror just to make sure nobody was creeping up behind me, even though the road stayed empty and dead quiet. Something in my chest tightened with every mile I drove, like my instincts were quietly begging me to turn around. Still, hunger won over fear, and the glowing sign finally appeared on the horizon like a tiny square of safety floating in darkness. I pulled in, pretending the knot in my stomach wasn't getting any tighter. The place looked the same as always, faded posters taped crooked against the windows, humming fluorescent lights that made everything feel colder instead of brighter, and the same dented ice machine that hadn't worked in years. Inside, the store was warm, but had that old stale smell convenience stores never get rid of no matter how much they mop. A bored-looking cashier with a scraggly beard stood behind the counter scrolling on his phone, barely glancing up when I walked in. I headed toward the heated food section, thinking only about grabbing a burrito and leaving as fast as possible. But as I turned the corner near the drink coolers, I froze. A man in an oversized orange hoodie was standing perfectly still in front of the freezer door, his hood pulled so far forward that his face was swallowed by darkness. He didn't look like someone browsing or even thinking, he looked like someone waiting, and that alone sent a cold wave down my spine. His hands hung at his sides, fingers twitching slightly like he was shivering, but the store wasn't cold enough for that. I tried pretending I wasn't bothered and walked past him slowly, hoping to catch even a glimpse of his face inside the shadows of the hood, but it was completely swallowed in darkness. The closer I got, the more wrong it felt, like standing too near a live wire humming with energy. When I reached the end of the aisle, something in me insisted I look again, just to confirm he wasn't staring at me, but before I even turned fully, he snapped his head in my direction so fast I actually stepped back. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel them drilling into me. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking, pretending I hadn't noticed him, even though my pulse was hammering against the inside of my neck. I grabbed the first burrito I saw, not even checking the flavor, and hurried to the counter. The microwave buzzed loudly, and every second felt like something was crawling up my back, whispering that I needed to leave. I kept glancing toward the aisle where the hooded man stood, half expecting him to be right behind me, but the aisle was empty. For a moment I wondered if I imagined the whole thing. Maybe sleep deprivation making me paranoid, but the uneasy pit in my stomach didn't go anywhere. When the cashier handed me the hot burrito, I muttered a quick thanks and rushed out into the cold air like the store was a sinking ship. As soon as I climbed into my car, I locked the doors automatically, gripping the steering wheel for a moment just to steady my breathing. The windows were fogging slightly, and as I wiped them with my sleeve, I scanned the lot, half expecting to see the hooded guy standing somewhere he shouldn't be. Nobody was outside. The parking lot was empty except for a dark SUV parked on the far right, its engine running softly, puffing little clouds into the cold air. I couldn't remember seeing it when I arrived, but I didn't think much of it. I didn't even look twice, just turned the key and backed out of the lot. But the second I pulled onto the main road, a strange feeling ran through my entire body like icy water. Something was off, horribly off. The road was just as empty as before, and that thick blanket of darkness made it feel like I was the only living person left in the world. A few minutes passed in silence, broken only by my engine humming and the occasional rattle from the heating vents. Then headlights appeared behind me, small at first, barely noticeable. But they grew larger quickly, too quickly, closing the distance as if someone had stomped on their accelerator the moment I passed the store. My first thought was that it might be a cop, so I slowed down a little, waiting for flashing lights. None appeared. Instead, The vehicle kept gaining on me until it was close enough that the beams nearly blinded me in the mirror. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as dread crawled up my spine. By the time the SUV was right behind me, I knew without a doubt it was the same one from the parking lot. The engine sound, the height, the shape, I didn't need to see the color to know it was them. The vehicle swerved slightly as if trying to get my attention, then honked, long and sharp, cutting through the night like a warning shot. I pressed my foot on the gas, telling myself not to panic, even though every inch of my brain was screaming that I was in danger. The SUV stayed glued to my bumper, matching my speed with an eerie precision, its headlights bouncing violently across my mirror. I sped up more, and it did the same, refusing to give me even a single inch of space. I didn't want to believe this was happening. It felt too surreal, too bizarre, like something ripped straight out of an online horror story. But the fear clawing through my chest was very real, and when the SUV jerked left and rammed me lightly, everything inside me snapped. The car jolted, my tires screeched, and I fought the steering wheel with everything I had just to stay in my lane. Another hit came seconds later, harder this time, making the car fishtail before I regained control. My breathing was rapid and shallow now, my heart racing so violently it felt like it was bruising my ribs, but I couldn't slow down, not for a second. The SUV honked again, almost like it was taunting me, daring me to react in a way that would end everything right there. My mind raced, trying to think of anything: an exit, a turn, a driveway, but there was nothing except empty land stretching for miles. I felt trapped, like a mouse being pushed toward a wall by a predator that already knew it had one. When the SUV pulled up beside me, my stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. The passenger window was dark, but I could make out a shape inside, someone leaning forward just enough that the hood they were wearing brushed the glass. I couldn't see the face, but I knew that silhouette, the orange hood. The same one from the store. My throat tightened painfully as the SUV drifted closer, inches from slamming into the side of my car. I didn't think I reacted purely on terror. I slammed my brakes as hard as I could, gripping the wheel with both hands as my car lurched violently. The screech echoed through the empty fields as the SUV shot forward, caught off guard by how suddenly I slowed. It swerved wildly, fishtailing across both lanes before sliding off the road entirely. I saw the headlights spin, then vanish into darkness as the vehicle plowed into the ditch and disappeared from view. I didn't wait to see if they were stuck or spinning around to chase me again. I stepped on the gas and didn't ease up for a second, driving faster than I ever had in my life just to put as much distance as possible between me and that shadowy stretch of road. When I finally reached the edge of town, the streetlights felt like a warm blanket wrapping around me, the first sense of safety I'd felt since leaving the store. I pulled into a brightly lit diner parking lot, my hands trembling so badly I could barely dial 911. My voice cracked when I explained what happened, every word sounding unbelievable even to my own ears. An officer showed up 20 minutes later and took my statement, writing everything down with a skeptical look that made me feel stupid even though I knew what I saw. They searched the road but claimed they found no vehicle, no tire tracks, nothing that indicated someone had driven into the ditch, like the SUV vanished into thin air. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that, and even now, weeks later, I still feel my chest tighten every time I think about those headlights rushing toward me. I keep telling myself it was just some random psycho, maybe someone high or drunk, but there's one detail I can't shake. When the SUV pulled up beside me and I saw the hooded figure inside leaning toward the window, I noticed something small but unmistakable. Their hood wasn't orange anymore. It was wet. Completely soaked, dripping like they had stepped into a storm that didn't exist anywhere on that road. And even though I never saw their face, I swear I felt them smiling at me like they hadn't finished whatever they were trying to do.